Welcome to Red Carpet Healthcare Solutions, hosted by Dr. Ryan Molli and Travis Buzzell. Join us on this journey as we educate the patient population, inform today's medical providers, and inspire tomorrow's medical leaders through education and in-depth discussions. We can all discover today's best healthcare solutions. Now, sit back and enjoy Red Carpet Healthcare Solutions Private Practice Podcasters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Red Carpet Healthcare Solutions Private Practice Podcasters. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Sawbones Molli, along with my co-host,
Travis Buzzell.
And tonight we've got a great episode.
Yeah.
We've had to reschedule 2.5 times, and I want to thank our guests for being so flexible. We've had to do this with a couple other guests too, but why don't you give us a little rundown as to who she is?
I'm excited about tonight's guest. She's a speaker. She is a fierce physician advocate, physician wellness, the founder of Step Up, and I can't wait to hear more about that. So without further ado, tonight's guest, Kim Downey.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here. It's a stand up for doctors.
I love it. I can't wait to hear more about it. And, you know, I think the way we start every podcast, if you could just give us, 2-3 minutes, again, we going back and forth this every time I do this, 10,000, 30,000, a broad view of sort of who you are, where you came from, a little bit about your background and how we got here today.
Sure. So I'm a pediatric physical therapist by training, and I was working at a local elementary school in 2020, and I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So I had surgery, and 3 of my parathyroids were inadvertently removed, and the 4th one didn't kick in, and that caused a series of complications with calcium regulation, kidney function. The next summer, I blacked out and fell, hit my head, low calcium, caused a cardiac arrhythmia, and I ended up with Lyme disease, a concussion, thoracic outlet syndrome, a whiplash injury, and a broken toe. And I went to 4 months of physical therapy, and I was in good shape by December 29th, 2021. But the next day I was back on the operating table because we just found out I had breast cancer. So I had surgery and a month of radiation for that, and I needed another MRI, and turns out I had breast cancer on the other side. So I needed another month of surgery and radiation, and I had an incredible radiologist. And by that fall of 2022, I was thinking, okay, I kept thinking one more thing and then I'll be done. One more thing, I can get back to my regular life. So I needed a mammogram and ultrasound, and I was looking forward to seeing my radiologist. And I showed up and he wasn't there, and I asked where he was, and they said he died a month ago. And I asked what happened, and they said the family hasn't shared that. And in that moment, I knew he had taken his own life, and I felt a calling to support doctors. So that's what I've been doing pretty much from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed. Dr. Michael Hirsch, his Better Physician Life blog, had showed up on my Facebook feed in the spring of 2022. I had followed all of his blogs for the year, and he was celebrating his year of blogging. So I reached out to congratulate him, and we kept communicating. And I asked if he could talk to me because I thought maybe I'd feel better if I could share the story of my doctor. And we kept communicating, and he connected me on LinkedIn. And that was the April 2023. I had less than 150 connections. I never went on LinkedIn, and none were doctors. And now I have like over 13,000. And it's just about all doctors.
Yeah. What a journey. I think you're going to be an amazing guest. There's not an episode that goes by where Travis and I don't talk about physician burnout and physician suicide, which, as you know, as we know, as all of our guests know that have listened to any previous episodes, we now have the number one suicide rate of all professions across all professions in the United States. It's pretty sad. I mean, we took that number one spot over from dentists a couple years ago. The physician burnout rate is highest it's ever been. Physicians are leaving healthcare and medicine in alarming rates. And the aging population, like just for what I do, hip and knee replacement surgery, our numbers are supposed to double by 2030, like the amount of joint replacements that need to be done. And there's going to be fewer and fewer of us to do it. So this is a very big problem for, patients. This is a very big problem for physicians. This is a very big problem for this country. And, we've been talking about it so much. I know you've been an advocate for at least 3 or 4 years now from what you're sharing.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that the more that we have these, what can be challenging or difficult conversations is very, very important to just bring awareness to the fact that this isn't something that's unique to one area of the country. This is a very widespread thing that's not going anywhere anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And my first article was a tribute to my radiologist because I was struggling, and Dr. Michael Hirsch said, why don't you take a day? This is again spring of 2023, and write about him. And I did. And he said it was really good and I should submit it to Kevin MD. So I did. And that was my first article and my first podcast. And then I wrote a few more in support of physicians. And then doctors started reaching out to me to collaborate, because often I think they feel so siloed, and it felt safe and they wanted to share their stories. So now I collaborate mostly with doctors, but with other people that intersect with healthcare. And we write monthly articles for Kevin MD, and he has me on every month. So that's just one thing that I'm doing.
What is Kevin MD?
Social media's leading physician voice. So he says his site gets like 3 million hits a month, and he publishes. So that was, without me realizing it, that was my education in this space. So back in the spring of 2022, when Michael's Better Physician Life showed up on my Facebook feed, I think because that did, the algorithm put Kevin MD on, and I started reading every article. So anybody can submit. It's mostly doctors, but other people that intersect with healthcare. And he publishes 5 articles a day, and only about a quarter of those, because he publishes also like about 15, 20-minute podcasts 365 days a year. So, but only a quarter of the people who write articles do the podcast. And he talks about all of these things. So now, and I've collaborated on many, from articles about physician suicide to creativity, doctors, like all kinds of things. And actually, I'm ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, and my most recent article was a collaboration with Corey Feist, and we'll be recording an episode with Kevin. We did it for Mental Health Awareness Month. And to spotlight
what type of physician is Kevin?
Sorry?
What type of physician is Kevin?
He's an internal medicine physician in New Hampshire.
There's no way he still practices medicine by doing 365 days worth of podcasts. Does he?
He does.
Wow.
Yep.
How long is
part-time,
podcast?
I believe, but I don't know his schedule, but I know when he records the episodes.
How long is a typical episode for him?
Like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
So just, like topics, snippet. That's kind of cool. We're going to have to check that out.
So he generally records them like a couple days a week for like a couple hours. So he does them every 30 minutes. So they're always less than 30 minutes.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So lines them up and has a library ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That's cool. I have to tell you, just, as you were kind of giving us sort of the background and how you sort of got into this space, it's like, to me, I think that's the biggest part of medicine that gets lost is like, for your radiologist, to understand what an impact he made on you and how important, his care, his words, just how much you trusted him with your care. It's like, those are the conversations that I feel like between patients and physicians are so lost and just not a part of that process anymore because there's no time, right? It's like RVU, volume, got to see a lot of patients, got to get them out at the door, got to keep the hospital administrators happy, got to keep the revenue high. It's like, that to me is just like the saddest part about this whole thing is just like, there are so many patients that are so appreciative of the things that their doctors do, the extra time that they take. I mean, I hear stories about this guy all the time, because I have a different interaction with the, with the practice, and I get to see these things and have these conversations about, the devil's in the detail, right? And it's just like, but that is like the physician way, right? I mean, it is very detailed oriented, and it's like, I know how much people appreciate it, but sometimes they just don't get the venue or like the space or the moment or whatever you want to call it to just convey that appreciation to them like you would someone holding the door. I mean, that might seem silly, but I mean, sometimes it just makes people's day, and physicians do those sorts of gestures every day, but they never, I don't feel, get the opportunity to realize that appreciation because of the model that's been created now that's just so, open the door, get them in, get them out. And, to kind of hear your story, I mean, I think it just it validates sort of what I've always thought is like, there's a much deeper connection with, the person providing care to you, right? I mean, it's like provider, healthcare provider, caretaker, right? All these different, acronyms that you can use that are synonymous with, physicians. It's just like, care is really at like the core of it. And it just is like, it really disheartening and kind of heartbreaking that, some of these, individuals don't ever get to realize how appreciated and how needed, they really are before, these sort of go to these dark places. And that's why I think it's important that we have these conversations, because it's like, I just think far too long we just shy away from it. Just, oof, man, that's heavy. Let's not talk about that. It's like, yeah, I understand that, but it's happening. And you're yet another person that we've, had on the podcast that's been, just like affected by it, right? And have experienced it. And it's just like, getting to the end of your journey and, really wanting that validation with the person that you trust, that you've kind of started that process with, and, getting that news is just like, what the heck, man,
Yeah, well, when I got connected on LinkedIn, so I had actually been concerned. So when I had the second surgery, without going into details for the sake of time, because I could send you a link to my Kevin MD author page, and you can read the article that I wrote about my radiologist. I think it's beautiful. He had performed a couple feats of miraculous technical skill on me. So the first time I know the surgery was successful because of him and because of the surgeon. So that was around January 2023 that I wrote them both thank you notes. And I had never written a doctor a thank you note, because before then I never considered myself really a patient. You go once a year, you have your regular checkups, and until I had the thyroid cancer before that. And so I was appreciative. And then I knew how difficult things were, because obviously some of that I experienced as a physical therapist. And through reading the Kevin MD articles, I came to understand even the extra burdens that physicians were facing. So I wrote all my doctors, because now I have a team of doctors, thank you notes. And I actually reached out to my local healthcare system to try to do something to help doctors. And long story short, that didn't go anywhere. I tried for 18 months. But the thing was so as of that spring, as I was having in between the second two cancers, I was concerned about my doctors, reading those articles. And I had read, I knew there were like 1 million doctors in the country, and that over 400 a year were dying by suicide. And I thought that was actually absolutely horrific. But I was thinking and hoping, I'm like, I think they're okay. I hope they're okay. I couldn't imagine it being one of my own doctors. So then in the fall, when that happened, it's kind of like sometimes if your worst nightmare actually comes true. Because when they told me that, I actually said, "Are you joking?" And my arms and legs went numb, and I couldn't stop crying, and I couldn't stop shaking, because I was concerned about them. And then go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, what was your radiologist's name?
Dr. Sferlazzo.
Yeah. I want to read that article that you posted on Kevin MD. And I'm curious, when you said you reached out to kind of like the local, was it a hospital system? Was it a healthcare system? And why was there radio silence there? I mean, I have my own theories, but do you have any insight? You said 18 months and nothing happened?
Well, I think some of it's kind of like trying to, move a battleship or something. And I think because what I wanted to do was unique to help doctors, and they never had anyone that wanted to help doctors before, and they didn't really know what to do with me. I think that was some of it. But so then so what's interesting is then after I connected with Michael, then because I've been reading the Kevin MD articles for almost a year at that point, and then their article, because when he actually wanted to talk to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like a doctor will talk to you when they don't have to, like I never like randomly like talk to a doctor for fun, right? If they weren't like a relative or a friend or something. So then there were a few Kevin MD articles, and I started reaching out to the doctors who wrote the articles if it really resonated with me. And then they would respond, and we started having conversations. And then when Michael connected me on LinkedIn, and then I started talking to more doctors, and they were telling me that they thought I could make a bigger impact outside the system than within it. And I didn't really want to hear that because I just wanted to help my own doctors. I thought if I talked to other doctors on LinkedIn, they could help me figure out how I could help my own doctors. But that wasn't really happening. But then I was finding ways to support them. And then I started my YouTube channel, the fall of 2023, Stand Up for Doctors. So now I have over 100 episodes, and I interview mostly doctors, but other people that intersect with healthcare. So I have a very exciting announcement. This is the proof copy of my brand new book that I've collaborated on. It's proof copy there with 15 physicians. And This is actually going to be, we're calling it book one. It's going to be a series because I reached out to the first 20 doctors who were guests on my YouTube channel, and 15 of them wrote a chapter, and most of the other ones wrote an endorsement. And actually Kevin MD writes the endorsement on the back of the book. And this is so brand new that the paperbacks aren't even quite available yet, within a couple days.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
Huge.
It's very exciting, and they're just the doctors. They're sharing their real stories about what life is like in medicine today. So I know that you will all really want a copy. So this timing is to be on here tonight is perfect.
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of that. I mean, to go through it, right? The 28 years of training that I did, from elementary school, junior high, high school, 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, 5 years of residency, year of fellowship. That's hard, but it's the day-to-day stuff is equally as hard once you kind of get there, right? You think, all right, I've made it, and I'm 32 and I finally have my first real job and I didn't take any time off. And then that physical day-to-day grind starts to occur. And I absolutely love the opportunity to take care of patients and, improve quality of life through, hip and knee replacements. But the burdens that go along with it, which is what I posted on LinkedIn about today, was like, listen, everybody's talking about burnout, but what's the real reason for it? It's like all this extra stuff we didn't sign up for, right? And people can say, well, that's just part of the job. Well, it hasn't always been part of the job, right? We signed up to take care of people. We didn't sign up to become indentured servants and people running on a treadmill that the speed gets cranked up every year and there's no end in sight, right? There's no time to get off. Fortunately, I mean, I'm in private practice, so I can kind of set my own schedule and I can create my own hours, but it's extremely difficult, as I'm sure you're well aware, the burdens of private practice with increasing overhead and decreasing reimbursement every year, right? So there has to be some level of volume, and unfortunately, it needs to go up a little bit each year to kind of coincide and be able to insulate for that shrinking reimbursement that we see. But it's all the other stuff, right? The prior authorizations, and I'm not doing those necessarily. My scheduler's doing that, but all that extra stuff that we have to document on, and make sure that we're padding our notes to make sure that we do get things authorized the first time, or we don't get denials later down the road. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of physicians have taken what they think is maybe the easy road with hospital employment, which is that's where 80% of physicians now live, in a hospital employed environment. But and I think that that's another major cause for burnout and quite frankly, even physician suicide. When we've worked so hard to do what we want to do, we don't like being told what to do, right? And we're the ones that learned how to do that. So the loss of autonomy, loss of independence, and just being made to feel like we're replaceable. And I've heard a CEO say that. He's like, well, we rode that horse as long as we could. We'll just go get another horse. And it's like, that's how you view me, is I'm a horse, right? Like, seriously? Like, if that's how you want to look at it, like, why don't you step in and pull the cart for a bit and see how that feels?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But I give my own doctors, because in this book, so I don't think I shared the title, it's called White Coats, Courageous Hearts, True Stories of Doctors Reclaiming Their Humanity in a System That Challenges It. So we're so proud of it. And in the acknowledgments, I mentioned my own doctors, because right now I have a team of doctors. Between now, I need an endocrinologist, a nephrologist, a gynecologist, the primary care doctor, and the 3 oncologists, surgical, radiation, and medical. And I would do anything for them. And somehow they still manage, even with the constraints of the system, that they're amazing. And they've all been amazing in their own ways. When I could spend like an hour just telling you stories about each one of them and how they were there for me and how we see each other as humans. And actually, the last time I talked to my before we pressed record, I told you I was at a beach day, and actually my 3rd surgery was 3 years ago today. So it was 3 years ago this week that I saw him for the last time. He had to insert a magnetic clip prior to the surgery. And when he came in the door, he said my name, and I got a little teary, and I said, I just don't want to do all this again, because like the margin had been positive on my thyroid. We thought my vocal cord was paralyzed. I needed the radioactive iodine. And then with the breast cancers, I needed 2 courses of radiation. So it was like constant for 2 years. And I just didn't want to do it all again. And he was like, you need a hug. And he came over and he gave me a hug. And then he got the magnetic clip to pierce the metal one, which I guess is like radiology Olympics. Like, that never happens. And he called me over and he's like, you got to see this. Like, he checked a few different angles. He couldn't believe he did it. And then before I left, he was like, you need another hug. And I didn't know that was the last time I'd ever see him. And I sent him and my breast surgeon thank you notes for another successful surgery 2 weeks later. And then I was at the beach and he called to thank me for my thank you note. And I had written in it, and he echoed back the line. I said, I understand the excessive demands placed on physicians today has become an immense burden. And he whispered, that's exactly what it feels like. And he said, patients like you are the reason I continue to do this. I'm sorry you're going through all this, but I'm looking forward to seeing you again. And I said, I'm looking forward to seeing you again too.
I think, I don't know. That's tough. No, I think about it a little bit more. And I haven't, fortunately for me, have had too many, like those sort of experiences in terms of like just with providers and things outside of, I've been very blessed to have great partnerships and great friends that are now family that are, physicians, and I'm lucky that way. But, I remember when our son was born, and I mean, like our OB and like that whole team, like I was so overwhelmed with that day and just like the joy that came after that. Like I couldn't help but like, these people need cookies, they need pizza, they need lunch. I need to do all of these things because these are amazing people who sacrifice. I mean, I know it's like, I think there's this horrible like connotation with like, that's their job. It's like, man, that's just like, I feel like it's a calling, not a job. Okay. And so for people that are willing to, take that much sort of training and risk associated with what they do on a day-to-day basis, it's like, for me, and it sounds like you are very like-minded. Like I've just been so appreciative of, those individuals and those outcomes that we've gotten. And I think it's important too. And I hope, I know that in a lot of these segments, we've talked about these just things, right? And, we've always sort of talked about like solutions, right? Red carpet healthcare solutions. I think for patients listening, whether you're a provider yourself, you're still a patient, right? And, and I think that you're a lot more mindful of it, but for people that are patients, like, find the time, find a way to express, your appreciation to your doctor, whether it's your primary care doctor, whether it's your total joint surgeon, whether it's your, radiologist, your oncologist, whatever it is, I encourage you to, find the time, right? I mean, granted, I gave an example of cookies and those sorts of things to just show appreciation, but, kind words go a long way, right? And so I just feel like if anything gets taken from today's episode, I think it should be, use your voice, use your words, written, verbal, whatever you choose, and let these people know, like, you appreciate what they do and you're thankful and you trust them. And, I think it will go a long way.
Absolutely. So my word of the year is impact. It was action for like the first 3 days of January, and then I changed it. And I will tell you a brief story related to that and thanking doctors. So I'm part of the Medicine Forward team. I'm the community ambassador, and we organized an open space event at the New York City Burnout Symposium last November. So the day before the event, we called the question, how can we restore and nurture the human connection that's so needed in healthcare today? And about 33 out of the around 100 participants from the Burnout Symposium attended, and they raised their hand and as to what they specifically wanted to speak to about that. And it was everything from medical marriages to one doctor raised his hand and he said, we have so much empathy for our patients and we're expected to. How can we foster empathy in our patients for us? So we numbered those questions 1 to 8, and then people just broke out and they got to talk into breakout sessions to talk about that. We took a break. You could go back to the same session or another one. And then we had a follow-up Zoom. I'm also involved in the Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative. So we did a joint Zoom on December 16th with them, and we posed that question. So whether you were at the Burnout Symposium or not, you could go into breakout rooms to further the conversation. And I facilitated the one patient empathy for clinician well-being. So about a dozen people attended that. And then I reached out to them by email to ask if they'd like to continue the conversation. And they said yes. So in January, we had a Zoom. And I said, Doctor's Day is coming up on March 30th. And for 2 years now, I wanted to make like a local impact for Doctor's Day. And I didn't really have much luck because I tried to reach out to a local Facebook group. And, if you have a lost dog, like 200 people, right, will comment. But if you say you want to do something like this, like you get crickets, like literally. And I didn't know what to do or how to do it myself. So anyway, so there was like between 12 to 18 people. From January to March, we had a monthly Zoom and we talked about what could we do, what should we do. And we decided to have a thank you campaign, to doctors and for just to get the word out. And I connected Dr. Erin Hurley. She's out in Oregon with Don Veselka in Florida, who started a program called Cards to Warriors, where she sends cards, her organization, to either patients or caregivers to give them a little boost. So I had them on my YouTube channel together, and then we wrote a Kevin MD article and did a podcast. And then Dawn started Cards to Medical Warriors, which she launched on Doctor's Day on March 30th. And Dawn and her partner, they have a podcast. They sponsored it. So they would send anybody in America if they wanted these cards to send to their doctors or other, healthcare workers. And so just between all of us, like one of the doctors who was on the Zooms, he wrote thank yous to his residents and his own personal physicians. So I don't know the ripples, but I think many, many doctors got thank you notes that otherwise would not have. And even in my own local church for the youth group that Sunday, the pastor had them, like they wrote notes to like doctors and other healthcare workers. And then this Tuesday, I'm going to be presenting. There's a group that's mostly older people that come for lunch. And I'm going to talk about the work I'm doing. And I'm going to give all of them a card. And also then Dawn Veselka took off with this, and she got these cards on carts in hospitals, the volunteers that walk around to give you like shampoo or crayons or something. So she has these cards on it so people in the moment can take a card and write a note, to a doctor or another healthcare person that's making an impact in their life. So I'm hoping that from this episode, even that we can start to talk about, how we can create, more, some kind of real impact.
Well, I thank you for all you've done. I can tell you, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way. I'm going to preemptively say that. But this past Doctor's Day, I feel like every year has gotten worse. I got one acknowledgement of being a physician this Doctor's Day. One. That's it. I think in years past, I've had a half dozen. A lot of my employees would say, Happy Doctor's Day. I mean, we have Nurses Week. We have PA Week, Nurse Practitioner Week. We have one day. And we aren't doing this to be thanked, but we're not robots either, right? So yes, this is our job. This is our calling. This is our career. These are the expectations that people have of us. But it's okay to say thank you. I say thank you to my boys' coaches, baseball coaches, all the time. It's their job. It's their calling. It's their, choice to do that too. But it doesn't mean that words of gratitude and words of affirmation, which that happens to be one of my love languages. So every Doctor's Day, I'm not out there saying, hey guys, it's Doctor's Day, but I'm just kind of looking and waiting. And it's crickets every freaking year. And it's just really disheartening. I came off probably the hardest year of my career, 15 years in medicine, this past year. I was burned out beyond recognition last year. Compassion fatigue. It was just, I didn't enjoy what I was doing anymore. I still enjoyed actually doing the surgeries, but it was just so much. Right. And it was just like, why am I doing this anymore? Because there's very few people that are, you start to go down your own rabbit hole, right? So I was going down my own rabbit hole of no one appreciates this, they just expect this. I'm supposed to do this. This is what I signed up to do. So but for me, it's those very, very little things that mean so much to me. When someone goes out of their way to send me a card, to send me a thoughtful message on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatnot, because I just believe in no matter what you do, whether you're a physician or a teacher or a coach or a therapist, whatever it may be, just acknowledging people, just being kind to people too can just really boost their spirits, because you don't know what people are going through. And I can tell you, physicians are going through a lot right now. When we're talking about number one suicide in the country, there's a lot, right? So I again urge, like Travis said, just take that time to reach out to your physicians and just thank them for what they do, because it's not easy. And we're in a very challenging point of our careers right now.
Right. And I think a lot of people don't know, well, actually what I say. So when I started my YouTube channel, around the 4th episode, I made it the introductory episode, and I actually told my story to another doctor who was a patient of my radiologist also, who didn't know my story, but I made sure she knew what happened. I didn't want to shock her during the episode. And what I told her in the episode, I says, is before all this happened to me, I wasn't walking around thinking about doctors any more than you're walking around thinking about physical therapists. And I'm like, until you need one. And she said, that's so true, because at that moment she needed physical therapy. And then when I needed physical therapy, I appreciate, even though I am a physical therapist, when people would thank me, speaking to your point, I would discount it in my own brain, oh, this is my job. I mean, you always liked it, but I don't think I really, really took it in, because I'm like, well, this is my job. I know what I'm doing. I just do that. But when they helped me, because I had neck issues and dizziness, and we didn't know what was Lyme or concussion, and that a physical therapist, actually they put their hands on you and they helped me get better. They helped me with my neck pain. They helped me with my dizziness. And I was so incredibly grateful. And I feel like then I appreciate, and I left my work amidst all these health challenges. And in some ways, I wish I was still doing it, because I would even appreciate it like at a deeper level. Even though I was always kind to, to my patients. Like Dr. Michael Hirsch, we quoted him in one of my Kevin MD articles, and he said, that he saved every note and letter that a patient has ever written to him, and a thank you from them can like change the trajectory of your entire day.
Yeah, I've got a drawer full of them, and I'll open them up every once in a while when I'm feeling kind of like I did last year, and you start reading just some of the powerful things that these patients write, and the impact that we have on their lives especially when we're just kind of like down on the profession and down on maybe ourselves and our ability to really make a difference. And then you start, there's one, then there's two, then there's three. And it doesn't have to be Doctor's Day, right? I just use that as one example, but I do have plenty of patients that will send me probably 2 or 3 a month at least, I'd say, cards. Okay. But yeah, I guess what would be some other solutions that you have found, particularly for like the physician suicide piece, right? Because it's not like you're going to go around to all your doctors and say, "Hey, have you ever had, suicidal ideations, or have you ever had a plan?" Like, what have you found since you've been kind of focused on this for the past 3 years, being of benefit to help kind of reverse this trend?
So lots of things. So one is raising awareness with everybody. And I feel like I do think that pandemic broke something open, and that people weren't as willing to talk about mental health issues before. And we still have a ways to go to reduce the stigma. And the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation is doing incredible work in that regard. And there's still a lot more, that we need to do. But just talking about it and having these conversations. And since this happened, and like you said, I'm not gonna, even from my own doctor, like I was wondering if I could have said, like, "Are you okay?" But I didn't know him that well. And sometimes, even if you ask, they aren't generally probably going to tell you, right? So it's kind of like what can you do? So there was one since then, so now my radar is up, and I was a little bit concerned about one of my doctors, and I thought, well, this could be nothing, but now I don't let it go. So I reached out to like another doctor because I thought they were friends, and I just wrote him a note, and I said, "Could you do like a friend check on so and so?" I says, "This might be nothing." So he actually did reach out to him, and the other doctor, was okay, but he so appreciated that I did that, because I think they both probably got to have like a heartfelt conversation and a moment of connection that otherwise with their busy days, they're not in the same specialty, they're not in the same town, that they would have had. And he said to me, if I'm ever concerned about like any other doctor that he knows, to please reach out, because I think, he felt good about being able to initiate a conversation. So I have lots of different ideas. And one is, I feel like every doctor, like we should have like a buddy system like they do in the Army. And, like every doctor should just have somebody that checks on them. And I participate in a women's fellowship group at my church. So through the pandemic, we just right away went to Zoom, but we never missed a beat. So when you have people so all this stuff that happened, it was like constant with me. Like there was something new all the time for like the past 5 years. Cause I haven't even told you all of it. Cause it's like the tamoxifen they put me on to reduce recurrence of the breast cancers, damage in my uterus. And a few months ago, I had a total hysterectomy. So like it doesn't end, but to have people that are always there, because if you don't talk to people very often, then your conversations are going to be more superficial because you don't have that connection or that time. But if you have regular times to check in, and sometimes it might be, I don't know, my wife got a new haircut, right? Or something like that, right? It could be little things, but then that makes time and space for the big things. So I'll stop talking right now so you guys can say more, but that's one idea I have, is somehow is like creating like a buddy system. So like every doctor has a buddy that they can just check in regularly about the mundane stuff. So then when the bigger things come up, you've already formed that relationship.
As a disclaimer, this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professional from any such conditions.